the fact that you're turning up to work, you're clocking in, you're doing those hard yards for your family, like give yourself a pat on the back and apply yourself some grace. And be real, like I said before, be intentional with your time. Your kids will love you for, even you just hanging out.
Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast, where it's all about helping people and organizations unleash their greatness. Hosted by me, Pasifika Fono, and my brother.
That's me, Kalolo Halfano.
The Zeducation Podcast features lively discussions.
When they share it, you see that they're beginning to feel empowered.
My heart, it's full of pride for me to be at Untitled Samoa.
As well as tips on leadership and business by some of the top minds and influencers around the world.
You don't necessarily need a degree these days. There's so many pathways to success.
Welcome to the Zeducation Podcast. Joining us as our special guest on this episode is Charles Lavea. Welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me, bro. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story, your journey, the kind of work that you're doing as well in the father's Fono space and being an advocate for Pasifika men, especially dads. But to start things off, this podcast episode, icebreaker question.
Yeah.
What is the best advice that someone has ever given you?
Bro, the best advice that I've had, I got when I was 8 years old. And my dad, he pretty much said to me and my siblings, if you can dream it, you can do it. And that stuck with me my whole life.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dad. Great advice for especially nurturing that kind of mindset at a very young age. Who we are today as adults is definitely influenced by how we were raised by our parents. So that's so cool. Great way to start the podcast. Fantastic. Okay, so Charles Lavea, for those who don't know you also, I mean, I know a little bit about you. I follow you on social media. I love the work that you're doing with Lavea. What is your story? What makes Charles Lavea Charles Lavea?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start at the beginning. Full Samoan, born and raised in South Okilangi. Proud full Samoan. My dad raised me to love my culture and really immersed in the Samoan, the way of being Samoan. My parents are from Samoa. They migrated. My dad's from Samatau. My mom's from Vailutai. And yeah, they really made sure that I was immersed in the culture at a young age. Unfortunately, I lost my old man at a young age. At the age of 8, I lost my old man. And that was a challenging time for our whole family. First losing my old man and then moving to a whole different city. In Auckland, as you would know, so a big population of Pasifika. You go down to Christchurch in the early 2000s, hardly any.
Yeah.
And so, for me at 8 years old, kind of moving around, kind of adjusting to the new way of life, that was really hard. I struggled a lot growing up with my identity. My mom kind of had to hold both hats, being mom and dad, working hard out. And so she was hardly ever home. And so for me, growing up, I was alone a lot. And I feel like, I'm just being honest like this, it all adds to your story. And so after growing up in Christchurch, growing up in through a lot of racist times, that was a real struggle. And then coming back to Auckland, I became a father, and that changed my whole perspective on life. I kind of found my purpose, and I knew what I wanted to do. I kind of just put my head down, worked heaps of jobs just to put food on it. As you know, being a father, you kind of just got to do what you got to do. And worked multiple jobs, truck driver, painter, security guard, all at once, you name it. And I just, the love for my kids just made, I just didn't think about, the work. I just thought I had to provide because that's what my mom kind of showed me. she modeled that, and I just kind of followed suit and put my head down and did what I had to do for my family. Kind of fast forward to where I'm at now. This journey's brought me to a place where I can now be myself. I work with Pasifika dads, and I feel like I just come to work and I'm myself. I try and, all those things that I had struggled with at an early stage, I struggled with it in silence. I didn't talk about it to my mom because, like I said, I was alone. And so we never had that relationship where we could talk. And so, man, I feel like I'm rambling now.
No, I'm loving this. Please keep going.
Yeah. And so, I couldn't. I suffered in silence, and I didn't know how to communicate with my mum because we never kind of created that safe space to tell her no. It was she would come back from work, would say, "Hey, mum, how you doing?" Just go about our day. Now that I'm at a stage where I've like reflected on a lot of that, I try and create that space for my kids, and with my work, I try and help fathers understand how important that space is, and so that kind of leads to where I'm at now. I work with Pasifika dads, and we just giving them tools and skills to build authentic relationships with their children. That's me in a nutshell.
That's so cool and very inspiring, very beautiful as well. Just listening to your story and your journey and what makes Charles Lavea today. And I can see why you're so passionate and genuine about the work that you're doing in this Pacifica men dad space. You know, this purpose, which has also come from kind of the pain that happened, you know, growing up as a kid. I can imagine it'd be quite hard, just like losing your dad at the age of 8. You know, thinking about at that age, you know, when you go to mum and dad for a lot of things, you know, for a lot of support, you know, especially when you're going through emotions and stuff. And growing up in a time where there was racism, like you said, so there wasn't many people that, you know, like you in that space too. And you mentioned the word loneliness, you know. So I really feel for you. But I love how you've taken that story and, you know, helped it become who you are today, being this advocate and an inspiration to others. I mean, what was it like though? Like, I mean, you didn't grow up with a father figure, or did you have someone that was a father figure growing up? I mean, you talked about mum and that like, because the reason why I'm asking this is because there's a lot of people who are fatherless or probably don't have a dad or father figure to look up to. Like, what was it like for you going through that without a dad, and what advice can you give to others? Yeah,
that, like, I guess for me, not having that, experiencing that love of a father, that's why I'm real big on it with my daughters, is I want them to experience what I never had. And for me, like, even though I didn't have that father figure, my mom held it down. And I'm getting emotional just talking about it, because a lot of who I am goes back to her. And like, I didn't have a father figure, but I feel like I didn't feel like I missed it as much, because my mom was such a strong pillar, and she really kind of held our family together. So I guess what was your question again? If advice?
Yeah, advice. I mean, that's so cool about your mum though, and we'll get into that a little bit more, because I want to learn a little bit more about mum. And also it'll be good advice for solo mum parents out there. Just in terms of, like, you know, growing up without a father figure, like, you know, what are some support and advice around that? Yeah,
just like, we just kind of double backing on what I said. Like, we know what we didn't have, and so just wanting that for our kids, you know, really creating that space for our kids that we never had. And so that's a kind of advice that I would give, is just to be real present, like, and spend that time to really get to know your kids. Because, like, I know it's hard being a solo parent, but you'll know, like, when you create those sincere relationships with your children, it will feel like, you know, it's not as hard not having the support. And so, like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but
no, absolutely it does. And, you know, you got the role of the father, and you've got the role of the mother. And some parents play both, you know, for obvious reasons. You know, I'd like to dig into a little bit about your mum.
Yep.
And her role that she played, because obviously just sitting here and the way that you talk about your mum, you have a lot of respect and love for her.
Yep.
What was it that she did, and you know, that really inspired and helped raise you guys as a solo parent?
Just off the bat, like the values that she instilled in me and my siblings, the core Pasifika values of family, love, like unconditional love. Like I'm not a saint. I made a lot of bad choices, but my mom she was constant. She was consistent, and she would hold space for me when she when she got to know me better. She knew that that it was hard for us, and so that love, and also spirituality, where we were raised in the church, and she took us to church every Sunday. And, you know, as like a normal Pasifika, that was kind of drilled into us. But those values, they've been a strong influence in my life, and what's really helped me.
That's beautiful. I mean, I can see how big of a influence and role that church and spirituality can play within a family.
Yep.
I mean, speaking for myself, you know, I grew up the same way, whether I wanted to go to church or not.
You
had to go to church, right? But then you look back and you see the value of it.
Yeah.
You see the value of it. Looking back, you're like, you know, at the time I regretted it, but actually I appreciate it. I'm grateful for it, you know, because this is what it taught me. You talked about the values that mom instilled in you guys. What were some of those values?
Yeah, just reciprocity. I'm thinking of my mom is she gives a lot, and she doesn't expect anything back. Like if a family is in need, because, you know, she was a solo mother, there was a lot of times when we were struggling and people helped us. We didn't even expect anything, but it was those moments, like pockets in time, when someone would come and drop off some food and not expect anything back. My mom really held that close, and she loved on other people because they kind of showed up for us in our moments of need. So she'll go and say if she sees a family in need, she'll give them some money, buy some dinner. So those values of just reciprocity, not expecting anything back.
Yeah. And that's something that you remember.
Yeah.
And that you'll probably pass on to your kids as well.
Of course.
You know, that's what I love about values. It has this generational effect.
Yep.
Right. And just by how your mum lived her life, how she treated others and her family, you know, that's how you pass the values on to the next generation.
Yep.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yep. And just to kind of plug in, sorry to interrupt you, but my daughters, it's not just my mom didn't just say that she'll do it. It was her actions. And so my daughters already know, just watching my mom give to other people. Yeah. So my daughters, if we go somewhere and they see someone, they'll be like, Dad, why don't you give them $20 to buy them some food? Because they've seen my mom do it. And so, yeah, that's already skipped a generation through me, and my mom's teaching my kids. So yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely believe in that. That's so cool. Passing it on. I love that about your mum, and thank you, Mum. For helping Charles become the man that he is today. So that's the role of the mother is so important, you know. I'd like to learn a little bit more about the role of the father. How important is the role of a father in a family?
Oh, it's crucial. There's certain things that only a father can, you know, do. And in terms of security, you know, what it comes with, even just having a father present in the room, it helps a child feel safe. And so the more that fathers are engaged, you're increasing the child's well-being. You know, they feel safe to try new things. They feel safe to explore or try, communicate. Because, you know, that's the role that's kind of what comes with being a dad, is, you know.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, I see that in my own family. I'm a father as well. I've got 3 kids, and just like you're a father. And you know, how my wife is to 12 kids is different, the style, right? My wife would I mean, hey, hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying this, but sometimes my wife, she's very loving,
Yeah.
whereas I come across as being a little bit more bold and assertive. Like, right? Like, I think it's important for the kids to have both.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, my kids can get away with things with mum, right? But when dad comes along, oh, better listen, all these rules and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for them to have exposure to a bit of both, right? And it's important for a dad to be that leader in the family.
Yep.
And to play that role as well.
Mm-hmm.
What is some advice that you can give talking to our dads out there about how they can, show up and be their best versions of themselves for their family?
Yep.
Like, what are some advice around that for dads?
Yeah, one thing that I like to talk about with fathers is the importance of looking after themselves first. And like when we model that, we're showing our kids how to look after themselves too. So like, our well-being is so important. Our physical well-being, our spiritual well-being, our mental well-being, all of these things, we're the first role models to our children. So like the more we can look after ourselves, we show up in our ingas, like we're better versions of ourselves in our families. So like I really encourage fathers to look after themselves, pour back into their tanks so they have a bit more to give to their families.
I love that. Some really good advice, right? Like it does start with you, Like, as dads, we're providers, we're protectors, and we get into a position where we're just giving all the time. And we forget to give to ourselves, not in a selfish way, but to help you be the best version. Be fit, be present, be clear, right? That person. I mean, I think of the analogy of a car. Imagine driving on the motorway with 4 wheels, 4 tires, but you're driving on a motorway at 100 kilometers per hour with one flat tire. Yeah. Right? That's dangerous.
Exactly.
Right? And there's negative vibrations on the car from that one flat tire. And I think of the 4 tires as like your pillars of well-being. Could be what you said, physical, your mental, your social, emotional, or the new one at the moment, like financial well-being, right? Because that affects your family as well, mindset. It's like if you are flat in one area, that can have negative vibrations on the rest of your life.
Yep.
Right? And so it's important for us to make sure that there's enough air in some of those tires. I mean, it's never going to be 100%. And just like a car needs a bit of maintenance, you always got to put air in those tires, right? Because eventually over time it does go flat.
Yep.
And talking about that, thinking about like, in our days with dads who do so much, got to be a dad. I'm also a husband. I'm also a worker as well. Or I might have responsibilities at church or in the community or sports or whatever it is, right? I'm a busy man. What advice can you give to our dads who might find themselves or believe that they're so busy to take care of themselves?
Just a lot of reflection, doing a constant assessment of yourself. Like you say with the four tires is assessing where you're at in those areas. Whether I'm doing too much in this area and I'm not looking after, like I'm doing too much physical well-being and I'm not looking after my spiritual well-being, or I'm not looking after my mental well-being, making sure that you have a balance between, all of those things. For me, I like to do, like I write in my journal, I like do one thing for my physical, one thing for my body, one thing for my mind, and one thing for my soul. And so just writing a note, okay, what did I do today for my body? What did I do today for my soul? And so just constantly, reflecting and also just planning. I know, bro, like us islanders, we just trying to, like, our peace of mind day, we just trying to do 100 things at once. We think we're Superman because, like, we're so masangi to being the head of the family. And so, just being more organized, being more intentional, and being and always reflecting.
I love that. So you've got this journal, but you plan and you reflect on 3 things. What is something I've done for my mind, my body, and my soul? Yeah, I love that. Yep. That's really cool. That's a really simple practice. Yeah, you could probably start applying right now, practically. Yeah, right. I love that, and I'm a big believer of planning things, not just going with the flow. I mean, I've got to do this. We all know. Yeah, like I got to go to the gym. I got to do this, but if you don't plan it into your day, then most likely it won't happen. And then you just fall behind.
Yep.
It's like, oh, when was the last time I went to the gym?
Yo.
Or, and then you just feel, you get into this mental cycle where you're like, oh, I haven't been to the gym for a while.
Yep.
And you get into this habit of not going.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think it happens accidentally. Like you just going with the flow. You don't live life just going with the flow. Like it has to happen with intention and planning and purpose.
Yep.
And what me and my wife do, because we have kids, right? We both work. We're so busy.
Exactly.
And we have 3 businesses between the 2 of us. And we're raising children at the same time. Right. And we have leadership responsibilities at church. And we get this a lot of the time. People ask us, like, how do you guys do it?
Yeah.
And it honestly just it's no magic.
Yeah.
It's just comes back to planning. We sit there in communication, sit there at the end of our week on Sundays. We reflect on the week that we've had. Then we look forward and we plan together. We spend about 30 minutes. It's like, okay, what do you need to do? What do I need to do? Who's picking up the kids? Who's dropping them off? What day it is? It requires a bit of coordinating.
Yeah.
Right. At first, it sucked for us because it's like, not this good. Especially when you weren't raised that way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you get married, and that communication, planning, and that is so important, especially when you're trying to juggle everything.
And it just takes practice, eh? Like for us that, like you said, we're not masangi, we're not used to doing that. The more you practice, the easier it gets. So if we just start with like 10 minutes of planning on a Sunday, eventually you add another 10 minutes and it gets a lot easier. So like, I totally agree with you. Planning is
it takes practice.
It takes a lot of
thing with practice, just like sport and that, right? Like you don't always get it right. And I think practice is a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as, I'm a perfect planner. You're always practicing. And with practice, you're always looking back, reflecting, how can you do better and improve? Like that's ongoing, right? Like especially with, I want to talk about marriage as well, right? You've got the role of a dad, the role of the mother, the parents, but just as important as being a parent is being a spouse as well, right? Like talking to the dads as well, or the mums. It depends what approach you want to come.
Yep.
Like looking after that relationship as well. Finding time to look after you, but also looking after each other. What are some advice around that, and making sure that there's still some good spark and intimacy and romance in the relationship? You know what I mean? We sometimes when we get married, we become parents. We're really good partners.
Yeah.
Right, we're really good partners. So you do this, do that, and then sometimes it gets very robotic. Right, it's a transactional relationship. Right, you do this, I do that, and then that's all you talk about. Who's doing this, right? Yeah. But you've got to keep the romance alive, and it's important for the kids to see that as well. What does it look like? Yeah, right. It's not going to be perfect. Yeah, but what's a good example for it? I mean, in terms of coming back to the question again, like
like what it's like you pretty much said it in the question is like it's really important what you model to your kids. So like in terms of relationships is how you treat your spouses, say if you have a son, if he sees how you treat your partner, he's learning, this is how I treat a woman. If you have a daughter, she sees by the way you treat your spouse, okay, that's how a man should treat me. And so you're modeling this to your kids all the time. And like, I think you said it earlier, is communication. That's key in any relationship. If the comms is good, then the relationship it flourishes, and I guess just comms in terms of spark, like that relationships are not always going to be 50-50. Sometimes you're going to be low, and your partner's going to need to carry the weight, and it's going to be 90-10. But on it, like as long as you're in synergy, as long as the comms is good, then your relationship will go, because it's not always flowers and rain. But relationships are hard, man, and they take a lot of work. And like if that person is for you, then that work is worth it. So
I love that. Really good advice. And it's about like thinking about the expectations that you're having and being realistic about what a balance, responsibility and support looks like within relationship, because every family is different. Every relationship is different, because the responsibilities might be different. I might be the worker, or you might be the worker type of thing, right? So 50-50 might look different for me. 50-50 balance will look different for you. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think, in order to understand what that looks like, communication is so important, right?
Yeah.
I like that. Cool. So, I mean, let's be honest. Even with all of that stuff, right? There are times where we have our low points
Yeah.
as men and as dads, right? Or as a spouse. Get a little bit impatient, a little bit frustrated, maybe very angry, right? And when you're very angry, it's hard to solve things that maybe it festers longer than it needs to be. It sticks around, right? And it can hurt relationships, can potentially impact the kids as well. I guess like talking to the role of the fathers as well, you know, what are some advice around coping through stuff like that, like with being more patient, being more calm and you know?
Yeah. So what I like to encourage fathers that I work with is having that awareness, like awareness of yourself, like noticing symptoms. So when you talk about being angry, is like, what do you notice your body doing? So whether it be your hands start to clench up or your jaw starts to tighten, the more you're aware of the symptoms that are coming up for you, the better it is for you to understand how to navigate the outcome. And so understanding like, I can feel myself tensing up, then that's sending a signal to my brain. It's like, oh, you're starting to get angry, bro. You need to calm down. And so it's first just awareness, being able to catch yourself before, you know, it leads to a different outcome. And then being able to manage yourself when you've caught yourself. So like breathing. I encourage fathers to just, you know, take a deep breath. Because what it does is it relates to your muscles. So your muscles start to tense, but when you breathe, like breathe with me. So deep breath in, hold, and then breathe out. Do it one more time. Hold, out.
Just feel relaxed.
And relaxed. Like, honestly, like you try and do something like a physical activity and then slow yourself down. You'll notice that like when you breathe, it kind of helps you focus. And that's one thing that kind of we lose when we get angry. We lose focus. And that's why we just snap and act out of our emotion. But if we can focus, we can catch ourselves. We can kind of slow things down and be like, okay, I'm gonna start acting angry, so I need to change this. So like it's like kind of like being aware of yourself and changing things in slow motion. That's kind of like what we try and talk about in our funnel. So breathing, maintain or like catching our focus, and then acting with our values, like kind of going back to that. And also just like our thinking. So like consequential thinking like bigger picture. Like if I act out of this, what's going to be the outcome? If we can see that like 2 steps ahead, then the outcome's going to be different also. Like
that is powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful because when you're angry, you're very narrow-sighted.
Yeah.
You only see what's in front of you, the problem, or who's the problem.
Yep.
Right. That's all
and it's
you
always
see,
the person that's the closest to you.
And it's hard to think outside of that.
Yep.
But you know, unless you're calm and clear. And I love the breathing technique because that's a nice transition. But sometimes you might need to remove yourself from the environment and you know, you think. But I love that, the power of your breathing, right, to bring you back into the present, to clear your mind. And I love what you talked about, falling back onto your values as well, right? It's okay to make mistakes, but the first step before improving is self-awareness. And you talked about looking at your physical, you know, how are you physically when you get angry? Right, what are the cues? What do I tend to do? And let's change it, because once you can find the triggers and the thing, then it's kind of easier to change,
Even your thinking, like what is your mind doing? If it's like saying, like if you're thinking, oh, she's being disrespectful, like if that thought is like, or she's being overboard, like that thinking straight away should tell you, oh, so like, I'm gonna get angry in like 2 seconds. So like as soon as you start thinking that, you catch, then you can just try and navigate the outcome.
I love that. What are the trigger thoughts? Because you know the patterns. You know what will eventually happen, right? Just finding out how it starts, how it triggers, and just do something about it sooner than later. I like that. Cool. I love that you've given some really great advice around helping men become more self-aware, right? What about in terms of the relationship with the could be with the spouse or the kids, when it comes to building a better relationship and connection with your children.
Yep.
What's some advice for men to connect better with their kids?
What I would kind of encourage fathers to do is just be real intentional. I know that we are busy and we don't have a lot of time, but the time that you do have, really just zone in, be present, put your phone down, turn the TV off and just sit with them. And you'll start to get to know them just by being you could be in the same room, but not be present. So you could be on your phone, they could be on their iPads. That's not being present.
Yeah.
So just putting devices away and just spending some quality time. Honestly, your kids will start to our kids are not they don't remember materialistic things. They remember memories. So a fond memory. I could ask my daughter, do you remember what I got you for your second birthday? Your third birthday, that toy that I got you? And she'll be like, nah. And then if I ask her, do you remember when Daddy took you to Taupo, Rotorua, and we ate ice cream? And she'll be like, yeah, Dad, I remember that. Because they're not, their currency is not materialistic things. That's easy to forget. But fond memories, creating those quality fond memories with your children, that's how you build on your relationship. And they'll remember that for a long time.
I love that. That's a good mindset to have, a focus on building memories with your kids and letting that guide and help you decide on how to spend time with them.
It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. I know some of us fathers we don't have we can't take our kids to Rainbow Zen every week, but even just sitting at home playing crosswords or sitting at home and playing, letting them teach you something, that's free. And
or going to the park.
Going to a park,
or going for
kicking
a
a ball
walk
around.
or drive. Outside in the backyard.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. One of the things I've noticed as well, my kids are at the age now where they're just asking a lot of questions. They're very curious about everything. Dad, but why?
Yeah.
But why, Dad? Hey, Dad, the conversation never ends, hey? I'm like, son, that's awesome, son. Yes, to try and in the conversation. No, the conversation keeps going. Keeps going, man. Keep going for a good 30, 40 minutes in the car. And I'm trying to be patient, yes, son. And it's the same question. It could be the same question over and over again. My daughter, Dad, are we there yet?
Yeah.
Are we there yet? No, not yet. 5 more minutes. Okay. Are we there yet? But, something that goes through my mind when that happens, this kind of came from a poem that I read. I think about in the future when my kids are grown up, they've got families, they're gone, it's they're not little kids anymore, and I'm going to miss that.
Yeah.
They're not going to be little kids forever. And so I try to cherish the annoying parts, but also the beautiful parts as well. All of it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And it's about making the most of it. Even when me and my wife are sleeping, we never sleep alone in our beds. There's always one or two other kids that join us.
Joys of being a father.
That's it, man. But I love it.
Yeah.
I love all of it.
Yep.
I love the annoying parts. I love the hard parts. I love the beautiful parts. And that's what I love about being a dad. All of it,
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. But man, thank you for sharing that. I want to just a little bit about the Father's Fono.
Yep.
And what you're doing with Lavea. I feel like this is good resource because there isn't really a playbook for dads, especially Pasifika men, right? But I love what you guys are doing in that space. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Father's Fono and what you do in there?
Yeah. So like I said before, I'm at a place now where I can come to my ngalawenga and be my authentic self. And so the Father's Fono is it's a space for Pasifika fathers to connect, tala noa, and we sit around and just talk about, we talk about being a Pasifika dad, some challenges that we face as children, as fathers, and just equip our fathers with skills to build authentic relationships with their children. And it's all just real, real experiences that they've gone through growing up, and we talk about that, we unpack that in the Fono, and it's this constant value exchange of stories. I've learned a lot, like what you said about those moments of your children. There's fathers that have older children come. My children are only 9 and 6, but hearing them say like, oh, you know, I miss when they were little kids. And so that reminds me to, like you do, is to take every moment and cherish that, because they're not always going to be young anymore, and they're going to be independent, and they're not going to want to hang out with that anymore. So I'm learning all of this from other fathers that come to the Fono. And that's what I mean about the value exchanges. There's constant, there's stories, and it's, we want to build a culture around building pride around being a Pasifika father. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what the Father's Fono is about, is, you know, building the pride. There's a lot of support for youth. There's a lot of support for mothers, but there wasn't really any support for Pasifika fathers. And so Lavea took that research that they did over 18 months, and they incorporated it into creating a space for Pasifika men to talk and to just share their experiences. So that's what the Father's Fono is. We constantly, there's a space that they can connect afterwards. So it's a workshop for 2 hours. And like I said, we talk about all of these relative topics. But then there's a support that they can tap into after. And so it's a private group where we just connect with fathers all over New Zealand. There's some fathers that are connected from overseas too. So Australia, Europe.
Wow.
So they've really tapped into that space. And it being digital now, like we've been able to connect with fathers all over the world. So it's a really awesome space also. Like I'm really fortunate to lead this space, and like I said, the purpose is, I found my purpose in being a dad.
It's beautiful. I love the work that Lavea is doing. A shout out to you guys, and especially yourself. It's important, like you said, there isn't really much support and resources available for men.
Yep.
In particular, Pasifika men as well. I mean, you think about like when it comes to giving birth or becoming a dad for the first time, there's a lot of stuff, you know, for the mother. It makes sense. I mean, she's the one carrying the baby and she's giving birth to the baby. But, you know, me going through my experience, I didn't really have anything for me. Everything was my focus. I was trained to focus on the mother, what I can do for the mother and all stuff like that, but not, you know, what I could do for myself or support around that too. Yep. And, you know, people went, but you're not the important person. The mother's the most important person. So it's like, no, it's not about who's more important. It's about, let's offer support for everyone, so that the child, you know, that comes into this world gets the best support from more places, you know.
Of course.
And so, but anyway, I love that, because there isn't much around how to become a dad or a better dad, etc. And you guys have created this awesome community that holds, that teaches each other, exchange value, hold each other accountable, and all that. There's a lot of good support, which is great. That's awesome.
Because I just wanted to say, like, for there's a lot of new fathers that come on board too, and so for them to like kind of bring questions to the Fono, like, oh, what do you do if, like, you know, like it's an open forum and of support. And so they're able to ask the more experienced fathers, like, what did you guys do when this happened? Or like they come and share and they're like, oh, my son was just born like a month ago. And so they have this this network that they can plug into, or like, you know, get some questions out there and get some support back. And that's
awesome.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about this Fono.
It's just awesome. So what do you guys do in this Fono or this programming community to help dad? So you guys get everyone together, you have good stories, good talanoa. There's a online group that they can join as well, and be a part of. Like, what else? What other resources?
And so, we always connect over food. Also, you already know. You already know that's like our currency. Yeah, that's our currency as fathers, man. Make sure there's a good feed. And so, we provide food, but we also we are planning to have family events throughout the year as well, to kind of raise that, like I said, build that pride, and just like create a space for Pasifika dads to feel like they belong somewhere, like feel like they're heard and they're seen, and a place where they can come and just talk, you know, just yarn. And like, you don't know how much power that has for them to just come and just disarm, you know, like, and be in a place where they're understood. Because like you see, just me and you just vibing right now. It's like we crack up, like we've just talking now, but it feels like we can relate because we've had similar experiences.
That's so good. That's good to know. And I hope our dads out there, you've learned about the Father's Fono. It's available.
Yep.
You've got the leader here, Charles Lavea. How can people get in touch if they want to be a part of this?
Yep. So if you just visit our website, www.leva.co.nz/Father's Fono, there's some information on there and also some contact details that you can get a hold of us if you want to hear more about our Fono.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we'll bring it to a wrap here. I've really enjoyed this podcast, hearing your story, hearing about your mom, the great example she is, the role of the father, and the support that you guys are providing from Lavea as well. What are some final words of encouragement that you'd like to give our audience out there?
Just applies, sometimes it can get, for us fathers especially, it does get tough. To just apply yourself some grace, man. It's the fact that you're turning up to work, you're clocking in, you're doing those hard yards for your family. Like, give yourself a pat on the back and apply yourself some grace, and be real. Like I said before, be intentional with your time. Your kids will love you for it. Even you just hanging out. That'll be my last bits of advice also.
Awesome. So great words of encouragement. Thank you again, Charles. For your time, for inspiring us, for serving us. Keep being awesome.
Thanks for having me also.
You're welcome.